Hello everyone, it's Andrew from Gem TCG here. And for today's video, I'm going to be doing a little experiment where I go through and see how well sealed investments work compared to the S&P 500 because on Saturday I made a video and it was talking about how investing in sealed isn't as good as it seems, and as a business owner in this industry, you should be using your extra capital to reinvest in more inventory. And a lot of the comments were talking about how the sealed booster boxes outperformed the S&P 500. So I kind of want to make a video and just go through the actual numbers and see if it's true or not, because it does sound interesting and figured I might as well see how it looks. Because for me at least, I have invested in sealed booster boxes for a while and it has been successful for me. So I definitely think it can be good if done properly. So let's see how the numbers actually look. So for this experiment, I'm going to be doing three booster boxes or three sets from each block from X and Y until Scarlet Violet. I'm not going to go beyond X and Y era, or not X and Y, XY era, because I think the numbers are just too inflated and it's very hard to even use those numbers because there's not an accurate market price from what I've been looking at. Also, not many people have been investing in booster boxes from those eras, which is why they are so inflated and have such a high market price right now. So, for this experiment, I'm going to be using XY and up. So, everything from XY to current. And then I'm going to be ranking it on a few factors after I show all the numbers. I'm going to be kind of making a conclusion based on one, do the numbers actually outperform the S&P 500 on a purely number scale? Two, what is the ease of buying and selling on the two? So like buying a booster box versus buying a stock and then selling the stock or selling the booster box. Three would be the advantages that come with owning booster boxes compared to owning stock and how you could leverage one or the other. And then number four is just the guarantee that comes with it. So, like, how certain will you be that the product will go up in price and hold that value? And then the last thing would be just the overall like concept of owning a stock versus owning a booster box. So, like, how much storage does it take up? How much headache does it cause? Making sure everything is like in good condition, all that. So let's head on over and I'll be showing you guys which sets I'll be looking at. So for Sun and Moon era, I'll be doing Crimson Invasion, Ultra Prism, and Team Up. And the way that I'm doing these is I'm doing like the worst set from each block, kind of like an average set, and then the number one set in terms of market price. Because I want it to be like an average almost, because anyone could say, oh, yeah, if I just bought $20,000 worth of Evolving Skies when it first came out, I'd be a millionaire or something like that. But then if you look at, let's say you spent 20,000 on battle styles, obviously your investment will still be good, but it won't be as good. So I can't just cherry pick and then make a claim on that. So I want to make it more of an average. So that's the logic for that one. Then for Sword and Shield, I'll be doing Battle Styles, Lost Origin, and Evolving Skies. For XY era, I'll be doing Steam Siege, Roaring Skies, and Phantom Forces. And then for Scarlet Violet, I'll be doing the base set, Surging Sparks, and Obsidian Flames. For Scarlet Violet era, it's kind of hard because it is more new, but I'll still see what the numbers look like for that. And let's head on over to what I have for the. So if you look at the numbers over here, we'll be checking the release date, the retail price, and then the market price with the profit percentage or the return on investment. And I didn't check the actual months, but I think it's fine. And then the retail price, I am calculating it at a 143 because I know that Sword and Shield MSRP was 143, but I don't know what the Sun and Moon and XY era retail prices were, so I'm just going with 143. Might be lower, so comment that down below if it is lower. And then the market is just what TCGPlayer shows for the market price of today. So just looking at the Steam Siege set, which is the worst set from XY era in terms of market price. I'm not saying it's like a bad set or anything. I'm just saying lowest market price. It is at $464. So if you would have bought it for a retail price in 2016, you would have seen a 224% return. Now, that is still good, but it is, of course, the lowest one out of the XY era block. So if we look at one that's more of an average set, which is Roaring Skies, you would have seen a 630% return. And granted, Roaring Skies was a very popular set, but it had a massive reprint, which explains why maybe this price is lower than what it would have been if it didn't have that reprint. And maybe you could have bought it at a cheaper price, like on the market, because I know there was a story of like Rudy, he had all these boxes from XY era, specifically Roaring Skies, and he couldn't even sell it for distributor prices. So possibly you would have got this at a cheaper price. And then Phantom Forces, which I'm pretty sure is the most expensive set from XY, is at $3,000, which would have granted you a 1,997% return in only a 11-year span, which is very crazy. And then if we move on to Sun and Moon era, Crimson Invasion was the cheapest set, which had a $318 market price, which would have got you a 122% return in a little over 8 years. And then if we look at the set that's more in the middle for pricing, Ultra Prism, the market price is $815, which would have got you a 470% return. Then if we look at the best set from the era, which had the Ladios Alt Art, that's like $2,000. It is currently market price of $3,849, which would have got you a 2,591% return, which beats even Phantom Forces from 5 years prior, which is very good. And granted, I know it's easy to look at these numbers right now and think, oh wow, these are very good. But if you were actually around at this time, I'm pretty sure not many people were buying booster boxes to sit on, which explains why these numbers are so high. Because especially during the XY era, there was like a lot of reprints, a lot of people leaving the hobby, and just a lot of bad things from what I've heard from other people. So not many people were buying booster boxes, which explains why, again, why these prices are so high, because the demand or the supply is very low. And now if we look at Sword and Shield, which I think is more accurate to compare or use as a comparison, because most people joined at this time looking to buy sealed product to flip or to hold on to because they saw these massive market prices from the prior sets. So I think looking at these sets would be the best comparison. And if we look at Battle Styles, which was the worst set from the era, had a market price of $185 today. So if you would have bought it for retail and held on to it today, you would have seen a 29% return, which in 4 years is pretty bad, especially considering all of the other sets and the return from the other sets. And if we look at one of the like mid-tier ones, Lost Origin, which I think is it's actually more towards the top. I know Fusion Strike is better, and I don't know if any other sets are currently higher than it, but I just picked that one for this example. The market price is $390, which would have got you a 170% return, which is very good for only a 3-year difference. And then if we look at Evolving Skies, which is the number one set from the era, has a market price of $1,343. So if you would have bought it for retail 4 years ago, you would have seen a 839% return, which is unheard of in 4 year spans. So, Evolving Skies, if you would have bought this, you would have been very fortunate with your return. And now, if we look at Scarlet Violet, it is a more modern block, so there wasn't as much room for return yet, especially because when it first came out, there was a lot of hatred or like hate, I guess, and people didn't like the Scarlet Violet block. So, especially because the retail price was actually higher than the previous blocks. So, right here, even there's an $18 increase on the booster box prices. So your entry cost is a lot higher. And if we look at the cheapest set, I think Scarlet Base is the cheapest. The market price is $194. So if you would have bought it at retail and held on to it today, you would have seen a 20% return, which is decent. Like, it's still very good considering it's only been 2 years, but it's definitely on the lower side. And then if you would have bought Obsidian Flames, market price today is $214. You would have seen a 32% return. And then Surging Sparks, which I think is the most expensive booster box from this era, it is currently priced at $245, and it's only been out for less than a year. And you would have got a return of 51.95%. Granted, getting this set at market price or at retail was very hard because it got scalped right away. Everyone bought it out, so who knows if you would have been able to get it at this price, but it does have the highest return so far out of any modern Scarlet Violet set. So now I added the S&P calculator to track if you were to buy this at the exact release date and then what that market price would look like today. So I'm going to make these percentages, but that doesn't even work. But anyways, if you were to buy the S&P instead of the Steam Siege set when Steam Siege came out, you would have seen a 202% return, which would have been less than what you would have got from Steam Siege. And keep in mind, Steam Siege was the lowest priced box from this era. And then if you would have bought Roaring Skies, you would have seen or if you would have bought the S&P when Roaring Skies came out, you would have seen a 219% return. And then for Phantom Forces, you would have seen a 233% return. And also, the way that these were calculated is by one, just running it into a calculator to see like what the return would be, but it's also factoring in if you had the dividends reinvested. And the reason why I felt the need to like include that number is because if you are investing in the S&P 500, you should be getting your dividends reinvested. There's no point in like keeping those as profit, because if you let it compound over time, it's a better thing to do. And it's one of the perks of investing in stocks is that you get dividends, so that way you can just reinvest and get more capital that way. So if you look at the XY era, if you were to buy the S&P from 2014 to 2016, you would have been, on a pure number basis, Pokemon booster boxes would have outperformed your investment. So now let's head on over to Sun and Moon. If you were to buy the S&P when Crimson Invasion came out, you would have seen a 147% return, which would have beat Crimson Invasion's return. But then if you would have bought it instead of Ultra Prism, you would have seen a 140% return, which is lower than Ultra Prism by 330%. And then the worst one, if you would have bought it in 2019 when Team Up came out, you would have seen a 127% return, whereas Team Up had a 2,500+% return. Now, if you look at Sword and Shield, for battle styles, you would have outperformed battle styles if you bought the S&P. For Lost Origin outperformed the S&P, and then for Evolving Skies, it's a huge difference. Evolving Skies completely outperformed it. Now, for Scarlet Violet era, if you were to buy S&P in 2023, instead of buying Scarlet Violet base, you would have outperformed it by 30%. because S&P 500 has been up 50% since that set came out. And then for Obsidian Flames, it's about the same. You would have seen a 30% return for S&P 500, whereas Obsidian Flames went up 32%. And then for Surging Sparks, this is the first time where there's a negative number. S&P 500 has been negative since Surging Sparks came out. This is because of like tariffs and all that, but you would have seen a negative 3.6% return, whereas Surging Sparks is up almost 52%. So if you look at it like these, there's only 3 instances where the S&P 500 outperforms the Pokemon booster boxes. And this always happens with the worst set for the 3 blocks that I'm pointing at: Crimson Invasion, Battle Styles, and Scarlet Violet base. So on those 3 occasions, S&P 500 wins, but on every other occasion, the Pokemon booster boxes outperform it on a strictly number basis. So after seeing the numbers broken down like that, it is pretty clear that the claim that the Pokemon booster boxes actually do outperform the S&P 500. Granted, there is a lot more to it than just seeing a market price go up, and that's why I'll be breaking it down and showing you more steps involved to like actually think about if it's better to just do this or the other, like do Pokemon investing or the S&P. And before I even break it down, regardless of the conclusion that we come to, I do think you should be investing in both if you're going to do that. I don't think you should just be investing in booster boxes because it's too risky to not diversify your portfolio. Like right now, I am investing in the S&P. I have some other stocks, and then Pokemon booster boxes, like ETBs, stuff like that. So definitely don't do one or the other. Try to do both. But if you are going to do one or the other, I still recommend the S&P for reasons that I will get into later. But let's see the other things that I want to look at. So on prices alone, Pokemon does outperform it. Other than a few examples with like the worst set being compared to the S&P, the Pokemon booster boxes have gone up more than what the S&P 500 has gone up by. And granted, it is a little bit hard to like time this because if we were to do this video a month or two ago, the numbers would have been way different because the S&P 500 has since gone down a lot because of those tariffs that came out, like the news that came out for them. So I'm sure the S&P 500 would have been a lot higher, and the Pokemon booster boxes didn't really get affected that much from the news. So it would have been a more close comparison. Who knows if it would have been different, like the outcome on the prices, but it definitely wouldn't have been as drastic as these numbers. So the second thing I talked about in the beginning was the ease of buying and selling. So when it comes to buying the S&P 500, all you need is a brokerage account, Fidelity, Robinhood, whatever you want, and you just put your money in. You buy it with a click of a button. That's it. You own the stock. You don't have to do anything else after that. It's instant. You get the stock right away. But then for booster boxes, you have to get one, very lucky right now to buy it on like the Pokemon Center website or Target. I don't even know if Target even has them for sale, like strictly booster boxes. So getting them online would be very hard through these like websites, unless it's a bad set, then you can get it with less demand. But then, or you could go to like a LGS to get it. I'm not sure how much they charge. I'm sure it wouldn't be MSRP. It would definitely be a markup because they need to make a profit. And they would probably go with what the market price is rather than the MSRP. Or you could buy it online through like a reseller or someone that owns like an online business and they just buy it from their distributor and they sell it online. Then you have to buy it. You receive the box after a few days or a week, and then you have to verify that it's actually authentic, it's not tampered with or anything like that. So if you look at the overall, just like the ease of buying, S&P 500 wins all day. It's not even a comparison. But then if you also look at the selling, it's a very similar process. S&P 500, you just go on your account, you click the stock that you want to sell, and then you sell it. it gets sold immediately and then you get the money right away. Very instant. But then if you go to sell a booster box, you have to either one, meet someone locally, and you have to figure that out online, going on like a Facebook group or some local meetup app, or you could sell it on eBay or TCGPlayer, and then you have to pay a fee on that. Or you can go to an LGS; they'd probably give you maybe 70% market price or something. I'm not sure how it would be, but it would be something like that. And assuming you sell it in person, you get the money right away. Of course, planning it and meeting up takes time, but you get the money instantly. If you sell it online, you have to make the listing, get it sold, package it up, and then ship it. And then maybe like a week or two later, you'll get your money. So it's a lot less instant with selling this stuff online. But of course, you don't have to take that risk of like meeting someone in person or getting, something bad happening like that. But granted, that's never happened to me, but there are stories where it has happened. And then you also do run into the risk of getting scammed if you sell online because a lot of people do want to scam, unfortunately. So there is a risk of that happening. So when it comes to buying and selling, the S&P 500 is just a lot easier, a lot less headache, and it's more instant. You get your money right away, you buy it right away, rather than having to receive something in the mail and then ship it once you want to sell it. And next, let's go on to the benefits that come along with investing in these. So for the S&P 500, it's not a physical asset, and if you own it, there's nothing like you just see a number on a screen. That's about it. But there is some more complex benefits that come from it. So let's say you own like $100,000 in the S&P 500, and instead of selling it, which you would then take a profit, which you would have to pay capital gains taxes on, you could then go to like a bank or a lender and get a loan with using that investment as like a capital, or I don't know the right word, but it's basically using the amount you have invested as leverage to then take a loan out with a very low percent interest, and then you could use that money. Because let's say you wanted to sell it, you'd pay like a 20% capital gains tax. Whereas if you take a loan out, it would be, let's say, like 5% interest, which is still lower than 20%. So you're saving like 15% arbitrage right there. And this is good because let's say you need money really quick, but you don't want to sell your assets. You could then take a loan out with a very low interest rate because the bank knows if you have 100,000 in stocks, there's very low risk with them lending you money, which is why the interest rate would be lower. And I'm not exactly sure on this, so if you do want to take advice on that, speak to like someone that's actually licensed on investing and all that. But that's just what I've learned and heard, and I've heard people or heard from people that have done that before. So that's one of the benefits. And then if we go to investing in booster boxes, one of the benefits there is that it is a physical asset. So let's say worst case scenario, the box goes down in value, it's worth nothing. If you enjoy Pokemon, you could still open that box and have fun with it, have some friends like open it with you and just make an event out of it. So you still get that benefit. And another thing, some people that I know, they like to just like have it on display. They like seeing the boxes. So that's another benefit. It's more emotional benefits, which is still good for certain people, like especially the collectors. If you enjoy looking at the boxes and seeing them and just having them on display, that is a great benefit to investing in this stuff. So it's kind of debatable on which one's better in terms of that. One gets you more emotional benefits, and then the other one gets you a benefit on the like leverage part that comes from it, and it's just more of a overall accepted asset. If people say like, or if people hear you say you have $100,000 in Pokemon boxes, they'll think you're like crazy or something. They won't really understand what it is. But if you tell someone you have $100,000 in stocks, they'll think, "Wow, that's very impressive." So it's a little bit weird on that. There's a more understanding with just investing in stocks than investing in booster boxes, but I don't think it matters. But that is just something that exists. And then if we look at the storage, which is kind of what I talked about with the ease of buying and selling, it is a very big hassle to store booster boxes because they do take up space. You have to make sure they're in a clean environment, no humidity, can't let any water get on them or dust or like anything that could mess with the seal. So there's a lot of risk that comes with keeping these in storage, and it does take up a lot of space if you have a lot of them. Whereas the S&P 500, it's just it's on the app, the website, and there's no like physical storage that comes with it. But those are, I know I mentioned 5 in the beginning, but these are the 4 that I wanted to actually compare it off of. And I think if you look at them all and kind of lump them all together, me deciding like which one is better, it kind of depends, because if you don't see yourself needing like immediate cash or needing to have spendable money, investing in sealed product can be better because it appreciates more, but it's harder to sell, and it also doesn't give you that benefit of using the capital as a loan, or like to get a loan from it. Whereas the S&P 500, let's say you have a big expense coming up and you need $100,000. You could then take a loan using your investment as leverage to get money at a very low interest rate, or you could even sell it at the click of a button if you really need to. And it's just a lot easier to get your money out of it. And actually, the last thing was the security I was talking about, like the guarantee. With S&P 500, you're basically guaranteed that it's going to go up, because if the S&P 500 were to hit zero, that means we are in a apocalypse and there's no concept of money. So if that happens, money doesn't matter. So it's like you're basically guaranteed that the S&P 500 will go up as long as we live in a world that's not an apocalypse where money has no value and there's no businesses or anything like that. So as long as there's a functioning society with businesses and people investing, the S&P 500 will continue to go up. There will be fluctuations, but it'll always hold its value or increase in value. Whereas for Pokemon, it is the biggest brand in the world, I think. So there's still a lot of security with that. Now, do we know if it'll continue to rise like it always does? That's uncertain, because who knows? Maybe Pokemon could be less popular 20 years from now, or they stop printing actual cards because they start making digital cards or something like that. Nobody knows. I think it'll still continue to go up, but there is more risk with Pokemon boxes holding their value or increasing in value, because there are many instances where a trading card game crashed and it no longer has any value. And the chances of that happening with Pokemon are extremely low, but it's not zero. Like there is a chance that it doesn't hold its value like it has been over the past 20 years. I'm not saying that it will, but there is a chance that it will. Like a very, very small chance. And yeah, that was the missing thing I forgot to talk about. But going back to my conclusion, I think these two are best done in unison rather than doing one or the other. If you are in the like reselling business, you might find it easier to buy booster boxes to hold on to rather than buying invest or like S&P 500. But the best thing I would recommend for all of you to do is say, let's say you have $100 to invest, put $50 to the side for the S&P, and then put $50 to the side for investing in sealed product. That way you get both, and you can add more diversity to your portfolio. But yeah, that's about it for this one. I hope you guys found it like interesting or at least fun to watch and see the numbers. But if you wanted to take one takeaway from this video, make sure you're diversifying. Don't choose one over the other. And on a pure number scale, Pokemon booster boxes do outperform the S&P 500. Yeah, hope you guys found this video interesting, and I will see you all in the next one.